So thank you, Henry, for agreeing to be part of our Trustees in Conversation series. The idea behind the series is essentially to encourage people who may be thinking that perhaps they're not really suitable or ready, or maybe they're just not the right person to be on a board. And this is to help them to break down some of the concerns and some of the queries and bits and pieces like that that people might have around taking up a board role. So what would be helpful, Henry, is to learn a little bit more about you and how you became a trustee.
Sure. So my first trusteeship was with Roy Kinnear Foundation, and that was in 2008 till 2013. And I've worked in the charity sector. I currently work for Asthma and Lung UK as their Director of External Affairs. I've been there for about 6 months. But actually, before I got that job, I was approached by you because I was looking to get back into being a trustee. My children were a bit older. I had a bit more time, and yeah, you approached me with this gingerbread proposition, which I straight away was absolutely interested in and fascinated by, because it's the only charity that represents single parents, basically. And obviously, coming out of the pandemic, they'd had a hugely challenging time, and actually are still struggling to get what they need in terms of both sort of financial support and childcare support, and face a lot of barriers in terms of potentially getting into work, but also accessing the support that they need. So yeah, it was a really interesting proposition, and it's gone really well so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that what Gingerbread does as an organization is just incredible, to be championing single parents.
Yeah, I think it's because what I really wanted to do was find an organisation that really resonated with me in an area I was interested in, but also maybe slightly different from what my kind of professional experience was. So I'd previously worked in housing. I'm now working in health. So doing something on the more kind of the sort of children's related area was also interesting, but also kind of supporting people on the welfare side, and also with direct support and advice was something that was new as well. So that's what really attracted me. But I would say the first thing to do is find an organisation that you really feel passionate about, because that will help you to give your best, but also be really interested in what it's doing, and to support it to go forward and be the best organisation it can be.
I 100% agree. You've got to be passionate, haven't you, about the cause?
Yeah, well, what I learned was that there is a governance side, which is really important to get your head around. I mean, you're there to make sure the organisation is being properly run, but also to make sure that the strategy is right and it's going in the right direction. But I think it's important to remember that as a trustee, you don't want to get too much into the operational. I mean, the good thing about being a trustee is actually involve a lot of time. You're doing meetings, you might take up a particular piece of work if they want your input on it. But for that reason, it's really important not to try and get too much sucked into the operational, because you're not going to be there in between to see how things kind of move forward. So I think it's really, that was the main thing that I learned, actually, that it's quite different from working within an organization to actually being a trustee. And you've got to take that bigger picture view and sometimes make sure that you are looking at it from a strategic long-term perspective, rather than getting into conversations about the detail of how the organization runs, because that's really for the executive and for the staff to do. What you're doing is saying, is the organization going in the right direction? Is it properly run? And what input can I have to help guide it through potential challenges or difficult situations?
Yeah, it's all about good governance and oversight, isn't it?
I think it's really important to be personally connected to the organisation, so to feel strongly about what it's trying to achieve. That's a really important thing. But I think the ability to listen, to really get your head around what an organisation is doing and all the different facets of that, so the financial side, if it's a campaigning organisation, the campaigning side, if it's running services, how they work. And I think the most important thing is to try and bring your own experience to help the organisation as much as possible, but also to work with the other trustees, because you're a team really, and the team is there to make sure that everything goes well and that the organisation is getting better and better. So having that ability to listen, having the opportunity to learn about other areas that you might not have worked in or might not be your specialty, and then working together as a team to make sure it all comes together and has the right result, I think. So I think one of the challenges is not getting drawn too much into the detail, not trying to tell. You're not really there to tell the organisation exactly what to do. What you're there to do is to make sure that it's moving in the right direction, that the strategy is right, that sometimes it's useful to just raise things that they can think about. So I think one of the challenges is not approaching it in the same way you would your day job, where you're responsible for the operation or delivery in a certain area, and that's what you're there to do. So sometimes it's just about taking the step back. You're there to look at the bigger picture really, and sometimes if you're coming in occasionally, you're able to do that more easily because you're not thinking about the day-to-day. You're thinking about where's this organisation need to be in a year, what are the big challenges out there, what are the big opportunities, and what do we need to put in place to make sure we've got all the structures and that the governance is right and the organisation is operating properly.
Absolutely.
Well, it really helps that I come from an influencing background. So all of my roles in different sectors have been about trying to influence government and get the changes that are needed. So that's been really useful in terms of applying that to what do we want to see from government policy to improve the lives of single parents and to make their lives easier, but also to put in the support that gives them the best possible chance to raise their children and do their jobs and do all of the things that we want people to do and make sure that they have the support they need. So that influencing and I guess that general communications experience has been really useful, but also just a sort of general understanding of governance, which I've developed in other trustee roles, and also helping with the overall direction of the organisation and where it wants to be in the future, and specifically also looking at stuff like its logo, its persona, kind of how do people want to feel about that organisation, stuff like that, which I think is also really important. Yeah, well, there's a few of us who come from a more campaigning, influencing background, and actually from some quite different sectors. And I'm also on the subcommittee for fundraising, brand, and influencing. And actually, where I think we've really added impact is recently we've been looking at the visual identity of the organisation. So the logo, which is obviously what everyone concentrates on, but also more importantly, what emotions do you want people to feel about the organisation, and what sort of persona do you want it to have? How do you want it? What's its tone of voice, and all of that. That's been really interesting. I love those kind of challenges because it's sort of thinking a little bit differently. So I think those who sat on that subcommittee have really helped to shape that, and that's very recent. And I think it will mean that we have a much more impactful brand, but also one that's a bit more on the campaigning side. We run some really important services, so a helpline for people to call up if they're single parents to find out what benefits they can apply for, what support they can get. But I think it's also really important to have that clear policy and campaigning side, because then people will want to support you. They'll want to donate money to you, and ultimately they'll feel really impassioned about what you're trying to achieve. So I think the first step is think about the area or the cause first, and really try to find an organisation that resonates with your passion. And what would you like to achieve in the outside world, in the trustee role? And once you find an organisation that really resonates with you and that you feel passionate about and strongly about, that's the first step. And then it's about thinking, actually, what skills and experience can I bring from what I've done in my career to this organisation? So the board will generally have a variety of different people from financial backgrounds to look after, the treasury or whatever, and also, people from other commercial backgrounds. But whatever background you're bringing, how do you fit into the rest of that team of trustees? That means your abilities and your experiences are going to complement each other, and that you have a really good mix of different backgrounds, different ideas, and different experiences, which can help the organisation go forward.
That diversity of thought and background is just key to success, isn't it?
My favourite part is actually being presented with these strategies, and for example our new visual identity, and being able to give my view without necessarily having to then go and kind of do all the nitty-gritty and the detail and all of the kind of the consultation and internal stakeholder management that all of that involves. The nice thing is that you might be on a specific committee, or you might be asked a particular piece of work, but actually really what you're doing is you're coming in on a quarterly basis. You get an overview of where the organization is, and then you can just give your view on specific things which hopefully add value and help to sometimes just get them to think about things a little bit differently, or what they could add, or what they could include in a piece of work. And that's really nice, because it means you're looking at it from a slightly different perspective, and that you can just give your input and your thoughts completely freely, which is great.
Thank you for sharing that with me.
I mean, the piece of advice I would give is actually it doesn't need to be that onerous. I think during COVID was a particularly challenging time for boards because there were a lot of financial pressures on different organisations, and obviously it was all remote as well, and lots of decisions had to be made quite quickly. But I think things hopefully are moving in the right direction with regard to COVID, and I think things have calmed down a bit. And actually, you can get as involved as you want to. It could just be that you come to the 3 or 4 meetings a year, and you come along and you give your opinion, and you look up the paper, you read the papers in advance and give your view. But that's not a huge, actually expensive time. But you can get more involved if you want to. There's often subcommittees that you can be involved in, and that's great, because it means you don't need to go in with a huge amount of time that you have to dedicate to it. You can tailor it to what best suits you. And so I'd say it doesn't need to be onerous. It can actually be not that many hours, and it's really rewarding.